Welcome to the What's New in AdminStudio 2018 webinar. My name is Paul Piesky, Senior Marketing Manager here at Flexera, and it's a pleasure to participate in today's webinar. Now, joining me today is Bob Kelly, Manager of Product Management here at Flexera, and Michael Connor, Senior Solutions Engineering Manager, also from Flexera. Before we get started, I'd like to point out that all attendees are on mute, and you can ask questions via the chat window on your screen. We will answer as many questions as time allows at the end of this presentation. Also, this session is being recorded, and each of you will receive a link to the recording within the next few days. We'll also make the webinar replay available on our website as well. First, we're going to provide a quick overview of our focus and then review the key features, highlights into our AdminStudio 2018 release, and also discuss the new at-risk module for AdminStudio. From there, Michael Connor is going to walk you through a quick product demo. And then we're going to wrap up the session with a summary and then close up with a Q&A session with any outstanding questions you may have. Now, the focus here at Flexera is first and foremost to provide value to our customers. Over the years, we really strive to provide the best in application readiness and really, continue to do so. In this new release, you're going to see that Flexera's at-risk module combined with AdminStudio 2018 replaces outdated approaches with an intelligent, automated way to keep your application safe and reliable. And more than just a packaging tool, this combination arms you with a comprehensive application readiness solution. And as you will see, it's some pretty cool stuff. At this point, I'd like to introduce Bob Kelly, Manager of Product Management, who will be leading our discussion around the new release feature highlights. Bob, I will hand it over to you.
Thank you, Paul. Excited to be here. Thanks, everyone, for joining. This is my first AdminStudio release since I joined Flexera, and I'm really excited about what the team was able to accomplish. I think you will be too. We have, first off, added more value to the product. So as of this release, we don't have the optional modules for virtualization, for application compatibility, and for Mac and mobile. Those are all now included within the core product. So if you are a customer today on active maintenance and you download 2018, you're going to see that you now have this additional functionality that was once optional. In standard, that's application virtualization. These are basically the modules that were optional before, so you could get virtualization as an optional module on standard. It just didn't do all of the bulk operations and reporting that you get in the later editions. Professional, you'll get all of the modules, and enterprise, you'll get all the modules. The big difference between Pro and Enterprise being the ability to do things in bulk and to automate the entire process. We've also given some attention to the look and feel of AdminStudio. So it's much more modern now. You'll see a couple of new views, a nice new ribbon menu, more of a Windows 10 look and feel. This will be an ongoing process for us over the next few releases to get everything updated to where it looks as good as we want it to, but you'll see in this release a significant change in the look and feel of the product. We also introduced a pretty cool feature I think a lot of people will appreciate, and that is around Java dependencies. So right now you get a new version of Java you need to roll out. It's hard to know exactly what applications that could impact and what you're dealing with in your environment. So now when you have an application in your catalog that has a Java dependency, you can be aware of what version of Java it's dependent upon, if that's end of life. You can also see what setups you have in your portfolio that include Java. So a much better picture of your Java dependencies so that you can be proactive and taking care and making sure you don't break any applications, as well as being able to see where you should be focusing your QA efforts to make sure that the updates don't negatively impact your environment. We also have the supportability risk, or the operational risk side of things covered as well. You've seen this for several releases now, where we are able to identify about 95% of compatibility issues before deployment. Windows 10 is something that, as we all know, is upgrading more frequently. We're getting new releases a couple times a year of Windows now. So simply by having your applications in your application catalog, you'll be able to run these reports and see up front what applications might have trouble, which require remediation. In many cases, we can help you automatically remediate those things to avoid any potential trouble. We've also integrated with the community tool, the PowerShell App Deployment Toolkit. As some of you might know, this is a community toolkit that's out there which will allow you to wrap your packages for a consistent user front end. So this allows you to customize the look and feel of the dialog. You can brand it with your own corporate logo and colors. And more importantly, it allows you to have your end users some control over the deployment. You can let them postpone, delay a setup, particularly if it's going to reboot their machine or close an application. You now have a consistent way to present the user with a warning and even optionally give them some control over what happens when. This is built into the product in such a way that you don't need to know PowerShell. If you want to tweak it, of course, you need to know some PowerShell. But the community has built up a great tool, and we've decided to leverage that to make it easier for you to take advantage. And then our big new feature, we got rid of the old modules and at the same time introducing one new one, and that's the App Risk module for vulnerability assessment. This is going to provide a way for you to see what applications in your catalog have vulnerabilities known to them. We have a Security research team that for many years has been researching vulnerabilities. We have another product called Software Vulnerability Manager, which scans environments for vulnerabilities and helps customers to roll out patches to remediate those vulnerabilities. We're using that same knowledge that we have on the back end to support this capability. So it doesn't matter what type of application it is, how old it is. What we do is we look against our database to see, is this application one that contains a known vulnerability? If it is, you'll see a criticality rating. You'll see a security advisory explaining what the ramifications of this is and how it can impact your environment. And we can show you if a vendor patch is available. So this allows you to proactively see, I have a vulnerability for an application in my portfolio. I need to update it. You can go download the new vendor update, get that rolled out before security comes knocking on your door telling you about your new #1 priorities. This can be done when you add an application to the catalog. It can be done on demand. And more importantly, it can be done on a schedule. So you can have it run daily or weekly or monthly. And when you go into AdminStudio, you'll be able to see the results of your risk around securities, the patches or packages in your portfolio. But a couple of screenshots of the different vulnerability reports that show up. We can show you by criticality. And we've got Mike to take you through a demo of this in a minute, and you'll be able to see it much better than here. So the real value here, of course, is that we've got an awful lot packed into one release. If you know AdminStudio and you know what AdminStudio can do, these changes only amplify the fact that we've got an incredible amount of capability packed in here. The vulnerability identification, we can tell you what applications in your portfolio are suitable for virtualization, which ones need to have something done to them and help you with that. Same for dependencies. If you've got applications like Java, we can tell you what applications are going to be affected by a Java update, what applications are affected by the end of life of the new version of Java. And we're looking for your feedback on these things because we want to potentially extend this Java dependency capability to .NET and C++ dependencies based on your feedback. From a supportability standpoint, it's going to evaluate your applications and tell you not just OS compatibility and EOL, but you can also see what is happening in terms of conflicts between applications. In many cases, you can automate the remediation of any potential conflicts before you deploy the application. And retroactively, you can see when you have an environment issue and there's a package conflicting with another one, you just know that you deployed a new package, now this computer's having trouble. A very good troubleshooting mechanism is to go back into AdminStudio and look at the conflict management results after the fact if you didn't do it ahead of time to see what other applications or operating system baselines that you have in your catalog that it may be conflicting with to help you narrow down your troubleshooting efforts. And then, of course, the mobile, the security, we've got everything packed in now, so you don't have to have all the different modules. They're just there for you. So there's a ton of value that comes right out of the box now with AdminStudio. And now let me pass it over to Mike. You'll recognize Mike. I think he's done most of the last many demos for releases like these, so we called him back here to do it again for us. So that's what we're getting, Mike.
Thanks, Paul. Thanks, Bob. All right. So what I've got here is AdminStudio 2018. As Bob mentioned, one of the new features of the release is an updated look and feel of AdminStudio to be a bit more modern and more in line with current Windows styles and guidelines. So it's a bit sharper and cleaner to look at. And AdminStudio really, we've actually already done it in the last several releases, but we've tried to consolidate what used to be a bunch of different disparate tools for different packaging and testing and deployment needs as part of AdminStudio and really consolidate around the application catalog and the application manager, which is the UI, the front end for the catalog. So when I go through and then launch AdminStudio, it takes me right to the catalog now. And it really is driving home the advantages of what the catalog can provide you, and it's meant to be that hub for AdminStudio. So I've got a sample application catalog already stood up. I've got some applications already imported into AdminStudio. And you can see right here I have visibility into several different types of suitability capabilities and potential issues that I may face with my applications in here. And just really to reiterate what Bob has already said is AdminStudio, it's more than just a packaging solution. It's more than just creating an MSI or even wrapping it into a PowerShell wrapper, which are all important things. But AdminStudio is really there for providing you visibility into your applications and the risk potential for those applications. In other words, if I push out a certain application to my users, and I could have hundreds or thousands of users, is there a potential from many different angles, from an operating system perspective, from a app virtualization if I'm going down that road perspective, dependencies, vulnerabilities, conflicts and things, is there a potential that that application may not work, at least on a certain subset of my machines? And is there any way I can get visibility into that and be able to proactively fix it? I always say I'd rather put out the fire one time here in AdminStudio before I deploy than hundreds or thousands of times after I've deployed it, right? So let's reduce those help desk calls, reduce the manual effort and the redoing of effort of preparing applications, and be able to fix it right the first time. So part of AdminStudio in the UI refresh here, we have some new pie charts under what used to be called Test Center. Now it's called Analyze tab, and I've got a group of applications and the visibility here. And what I can see right in this view is kind of the core major potentials for risks, right? Operating system compatibility, and I can see it across other platforms. So I may be Windows 7 today, Windows 10 tomorrow. I can see that and compare that. Also the Windows Server OSs. Again, app virtualization, Microsoft App V being the most prominent one, but we also support ThinApp and Symantec workspace virtualization and be able to test for that. And dependencies, as Bob mentioned, Java can be a challenge. I talk to a lot of customers, and I don't think anybody doesn't shake their head and wring their hands when it comes to Java and having to support it in the environment. And you just have a lot of times critical applications that you can't get around not supporting Java. And having the right version, the right Java runtime environment, JRE, for the right application can be a challenge. I even had a few customers see what we could do around Windows operating system compatibility, virtualization. They said, can you give me that insight into Java? Because that's after those two, that's my biggest challenge. Knowing what applications require Java, and what version, if it does require it, and does it include its own JRE, its own virtual machine, or do I have to include that? And of course, what version? And then, as was stated, new to AdminStudio 2018 is the ability to also get insight into any potential vulnerabilities for the applications I have in my catalog, and knowing which applications have vulnerabilities, how serious are they, and again, just be able to proactively remediate that. In this case, do we want to work on a version? Do we want to work on this package that has a major vulnerability? Probably not. Want to go to look to see what the next version is that addresses this vulnerability. That's why I'm not spending time packaging, preparing, and getting that application delivered, and then I have to spend more time creating the update after the fact. Of course, that's not to say that you test it once and you're done, right? Pull it into the catalog. If you're pulling in the most latest version, then there's probably no issues today. But that can change tomorrow, next week, next month, later down the road. So it's important to do a continuous process and continually test your catalog against vulnerabilities, because it may be good today, but that's probably going to change in the future. So knowing that information, knowing when it changes, and having information at hand to be able to, again, address those is very important. So I can kind of graphically see it here broken out this way. I could jump over to more of a chart view and see, and these are the applications I have in my sample catalog. You can see operating system broken out, map virtualization, some other testing. And then new to AdminStudio 2018, Enterprise and the app risk module is the security risks here. So I can see, and it may be a little hard to see, but some of these are, are red, and they say EOL for end of life. This one has a red X, which more indicates an insecure application. And I can drill into any of these, like 7-zip, for example, common application. And I can see it's been assessed, and I can see that there is a vulnerability tied in with it. So just a summary here, the title of the vulnerability, what the issue is, what the solution status is, in this case, the vendor patch, this criticality ranking. So this goes back to, and as Bob mentioned, this is all powered by Secunia Research, an organization that's been around since 2002, was acquired a few years ago by Flexera, and it's our in-house software vulnerability research team that are pulling in from over 1,000 different sources every day, going through that information, verifying the research independently with 2 researchers, only coming to the same conclusion do we go ahead and release an advisory. And those advisories, in essence, kind of normalize the information. If you're getting it from the National Vulnerability Database or from other sources, the data can be kind of all over the place, and you really kind of have to become an expert at reading vulnerability reports and releases and disclosures. And our team goes through all that and provides you an easy-to-understand advisory that they issue that has their knowledge and their expertise backing it up. So if I drill into it, I can see some information quickly, some more detail. There's a unique advisory ID, the title of this, so in this case it specifically affects 7-zip. From where means where it can be exploited from. So different vulnerabilities may need to be on the local machine or even on the network, and those are a lower class versus something that can be exploited remote. I don't have to be on your network in order to exploit you with this vulnerability. So knowing where it can be exploited from is very important. Criticality, we have a 5-point scale of how we rank software vulnerabilities from 1 to 5. Highly critical would be a 4 out of 5. And it takes into things like where can it be exploited from, the impact, in this case, system access. How easy is it to, is the gain easy to worth it, and the trouble to exploit it. Basically, a 5 out of 5 would be if we know there's an active exploit. So in this case, probably not quite yet, but at any moment, somebody could, a hacker could create an exploit that takes this into account, spread it across the internet, and this jumps up into a extremely critical vulnerability. Another important piece, solution status. So how do we fix this problem, right? In this case, vendor patch, there is a update. You can see down here where it says solution, update to this version, and we address it. So in my case, probably not going to spend any more time trying to package and customize and publish 7-zip 9.20 in this case. Why don't we go to 18.05 and I can address that issue there. See some other information about the vulnerability if you're familiar with CVSS scores, and it shows you how serious the vulnerability is as well, and the references about it. So this is usually information that packagers and the packaging team, the Windows desktop team don't usually have access to, or they get some type of report from their information security team after a vulnerability has been discovered in the environment. They're sending this information over and saying, go ahead and fix it. So being able to have this information proactive and upfront without having to reach out to security, this is a solution that desktop packaging team can use directly. And it's within the tool that you're already using to prepare those applications. So it's one place to go, and it's just another view into the potential risk of this application. So another area that was mentioned previously is Java dependency, and typically it's a challenge for a lot of enterprises. And I know if I go back to my overall group here, I can see I've got a couple of different ones, and I know DB2 runtime, if I drill into this one, drill into the details, I can see Java versions required. And not only is a Java version required, which would be fine, but this is actually an old version of Java that's required. And I expand this to get the details. It's saying it's Java version 2, which is both past end of life and end of support from Oracle. So I know that this application requires Java. It requires an out-of-date version of Java that's not supported anymore. And again, I can take that information and evaluate, well, is this really something that we want to push out? Is there a newer version of this application that uses a supported version of Java? Maybe we should go ahead and support that version. Now, of course, especially with Java, sometimes that's the version that you need because in this case, this is a runtime for another application. So you may require this version, but at least you have that insight up front, and you can document that and make sure that everyone else is aware that, no, we have an exception for this. We have to support this version. That's the only way we can do it. Having an older version of Java like this might also be a good reason to virtualize it, either through a virtual desktop or application virtualization like Microsoft app-v, and in essence kind of isolate this application. So at least if you have to use a unsupported version of Java, that version is isolated and won't cause potential for vulnerabilities and other issues down the road too. All this insight is part of the application catalog, and just kind of reiterate, it's really the hub, if you will, of AdminStudio. Everything revolves around it, from the repackaging of applications. We still, of course, can take legacy executables and script-based installations and repackage those. But those can be imported into the catalog. And what we've added the last few releases from in the past, our testing was kind of limited to the Windows installer format. It's an open format. It's easy to understand and read and provide you that insight. So that's where we started with. But a lot of enterprises we talk to don't typically repackage everything anymore. Some still do. Some just try to take whatever the vendors provided them. And if the vendors provided them an executable installation, if they can get the command line switches, that's good enough for them. So we've added the ability to import and try to export the right information from certain exe formats to be able to still provide you that same testing, that same insight from Windows compatibility, from the app risk, the vulnerability perspective, and others too. So we can import EXEs just like we import MSIs, and in many cases those EXEs, we can give you that same insight. And if you want to move forward and publish that EXE with command line options to your deployment system, go right ahead. If you want to repackage it, we can automatically spin up a virtual machine, copy the EXE in there, got the command line switches, automate that whole process, and now you have an MSI version that you can work off of and customize further if you'd like. Or you can wrap it. As Bob mentioned, we support the PowerShell app deploy toolkit. So for EXE packages as well as MSIs, we can wrap those applications into a PowerShell wrapper. You can customize that wrapper. You can have a splash screen come up to allow end users to know that there's an application installation proceeding, allow them to delay it, defer the installation for a period of time if you want, provide your own company logo up here so they know it's a IT supported and managed application, whole host of other capabilities that you can do with the PowerShell app deploy toolkit. And with AdminStudio, we can automate the wrapping of those applications. And you can do those with MSIs too. Some organizations want to standardize everything, has a PowerShell wrapper around it. You can do that too with AdminStudio. Mention the testing capabilities that we have. And of course, it's important to help resolve those issues. So in certain cases, we can fix a lot of the most common challenges, especially with things like Windows compatibility for Windows 10. Sometimes legacy applications are missing a manifest file or something for an executable, or do a wrong check for a component, a wrong Windows OS version check. Those type of things we can easily address, especially if where you have an MSI, we can easily help you create transform files. And of course, you have the full Install Shield solution that was made by Flexera. It's still the editor inside of AdminStudio. So if you want to go even further and customize and add additional setting template, to setting config files and templates and a whole host of other things, you can certainly do that, as well as create new installation packages for in-house developed software. Virtualizing applications for organizations is still important. We support the major providers there. And then when it's all done, and just also call out too, real quick, some mobile applications we can import in here, and do some analysis testing, tell you up front if a mobile application is what features it may utilize. So if I'm pushing out an iOS app that was developed internally, I want to know if it needs access to the contact list, or if it uses location services, or a whole host of it uses a camera, for example, as well as public store applications. So again, we can provide the IT pros the insight into those. So before I push those applications out and have potential security and privacy and other issues, again, let's get that information up front. For any of those that support Mac applications, we can also import those PKG and DMG files. We can do some compatibility testing there for their corresponding operating system, some customizations as well. And then for all those, the Windows desktop and server apps, the Mac OS applications, the mobile, Apple, iOS, and Android, the virtual applications, we can publish those and make it easy to get it into the distribution system of choice. And we support a lot of the major distribution systems out there like Microsoft System Center Configuration Manager, Casper, now known as Jamf Pro for Macs, Symantec's Altiris solution, AirWatch, AppV servers, and some others. So it really is when it comes to an application coming in to IT to it's ready to be published and distributed out to end users, AdminStudio is that hub. It's all done within the application catalog. So to summarize, AdminStudio really provides you a lot of insight quickly into your applications. In a matter of a few minutes, I can know if an application is ready for Windows 10, if it has any vulnerability risks associated with it, if it's ready, if it requires Java, and if so, what version. Is that version out of life, end of life? Is it included with the product or not? This testing that typically would take maybe a few hours each, right? It's a few hours just for operating system compatibility, maybe an hour or two for vulnerability research, another hour or two for looking at Java and which versions is required and which applications can be virtualized. All this we can do in a matter of minutes to provide you that complete insight and visibility there. And now you can better and more proactively get those applications ready and out the door and ready for your end users, shrinking that period of time for deployment from some organizations I've talked to take months to get an application ready down to a matter of days or a week or so. All right. With that, I'll hand it back over to Bob.
Thank you thanks, Mike.
Yeah.
So that was some good stuff there. So to summarize, we obviously are one single integrated solution, and as you can see, we're with this release, we're addressing both operational and security risks. Security via the vulnerability assessment, app risk module, and then the operational and supportability with some of the compatibility features we have, as well as checking for Java dependencies, things like that. We do support an ongoing application readiness process. AdminStudio has been doing this for years, and included in this ongoing process, again, we're addressing both operational and security risks. And I think it's very important to point out, and it's probably obvious at this point, that AdminStudio is more than just a packaging solution or repackaging solution. There's a whole process associated with application readiness. Of course, you can go through the process of migrating to Windows 10. However, beyond that, it's a continuous process as applications enter the beginning stages of their life cycle. You want to make sure that there are no risks associated with these applications before you deploy them out. In terms of upgrades, the customers who are current on their maintenance can go to the product or license center or orders at flexera.com, and you could download the latest release of AdminStudio 2018. If you'd like to evaluate AdminStudio 2018 with App Risk module, again, you can go to flexera.com, go to evaluation, fill out the form, and there you'll have a 21-day now of the both App Risk module as well as AdminStudio 2018, or you can call Flexera. Here's some numbers: North America, EMEA, Asia Pac. So there are various ways of getting AdminStudio 2018 and the App Risk module. At this point, what I'd like to do is open it up for Q&A. We do have a lot of questions, and for any questions that we're not able to answer in the session, we will respond via email with answers to the all unanswered questions. So at this point, what I'd like to do is start off and kind of throw these out there, and Bob and Mike, if you won't mind addressing some of these. So one of the questions is, if we have already have Software Vulnerability Manager, what additional gain do we get with risk assessment or app risk module, and do we need it?
Yeah, I'll take that one. If
Okay.
if you have SVM already, then you're already scanning all the applications throughout your environment. With AdminStudio, we're looking at the application catalog specifically. So it's more of a way for administrators to get in front of vulnerabilities and know what applications they've packaged are now subject to vulnerabilities so they can develop new ones, versus detecting any number of different versions of unknown applications across an organization. So that's really the difference. If you have SVM already, then you have that insight through that product and don't necessarily need app risk module to see the same here. It's essentially the same information, but applied to your catalog versus your entire environment.
Great. Next question is, compliment looks great. If monitoring for risk becomes a continuous process, can this release send me an email when it's found to have an issue? So it saves time from actually putting a daily check of Application Manager on the daily security to-do list.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. We are looking at doing that. We don't have a notification system in the product today, but we definitely do see that as a benefit. And even being able to run scans and other reports and get external notifications about changes to your catalog as scans are performed. So no, not in this release, but good feedback. We're already thinking about it. And speaking of feedback, I did just share a link to everyone through the chat mechanism here to point out that our community is out there. We've got forums and so forth, but I particularly want to point out the ideas area of the site, where you can suggest enhancements like this, and that can help us greatly to prioritize. And you can vote on others that have already suggested ideas. You can vote them up or down, and then that weighs heavily on product management decisions to what to execute next, because there's a lot of great things we have done and want to do, but your help in identifying more and in helping us prioritize those is critical. So I encourage you to come participate there.
Great. Another question here is, we'd like to know how AdminStudio works with APPX.
You want to take that one, Mike?
Sure. Yeah, sure. So APPX or AppX, also known as the Universal Windows Package format, it's what applications in the Windows Store are delivered as. We have support today in AdminStudio. We can import those applications into the application catalog, also provide the same compatibility analysis and some of the other suitability testing that we offer. Those could also be kind of what's called side-loaded into Windows 10 machines through something like using System Center Configuration Manager. So we could create an executable that would side-load that application, and when it's delivered to the end user, it's as if it came up through the store. So that's our support today. Microsoft has some new technologies coming out that kind of extends that beyond just the store and the AppX applications, and we're looking to address those changes as well.
Great. This next question is centered around the application catalog. Do they have to be MSIs, or can apps that are run by setup.exe and installs various MSI files be added to the catalog?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so I was going to say, so as was mentioned, okay. So as mentioned, up until a few releases ago, we were kind of limited to the MSI format. It being an open standard, I can easily read the tables and understand how really the whole installation is going to proceed and the contents of it. But what we've added in the last few releases, and includes in AdminStudio 2018, is we can look at a lot of the EXE formats from a lot of the major installation vendors and perform just as automatically as part of the import process. We investigate it and can do an extraction for the purposes of compatibility testing. And that applies to Windows compatibility, that applies to this new app risk module. So we can, in essence, unpack that EXE-based installation and provide you the same visibility and the insight. Now we're limited into the remediation of it, so when it comes to Windows 10 compatibility fixes, every EXE format different, so it's not easy to just go back in and make changes to it. But at least that initial insight and that visibility into what could be an issue, we could do that with EXEs as well as MSIs.
Great. Here's another question. Does the AdminStudio Standard Edition in 2018 support virtualization?
Yes, it does.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, the application catalog that provides you the insight across your applications, you're kind of limited in the testing since there's no catalog in standard. But to Bob's point, absolutely, we can give you kind of a quick overview, is it good or not, and then be able to create those virtual packages.
Great. Another question regarding the application catalog. Is it still a share with randomized directory names?
No, I think that was the case if you utilize, there's a feature in Enterprise called the software repository, where it manages the file share, the underlying file share with all the applications when they get imported. And it uses, it's not random, but it uses GUIDs to kind of differentiate between the applications. Some organizations like AdminStudio to manage the file share piece of it, others don't. So if you can always disable the, or not choose to utilize the software repository and still use your own file share, that works too.
Okay, great. This is a question that actually a couple people had this question. Will you bring back the Enterprise tab in some fashion?
So I think it's referencing in the previous versions of AdminStudio, there was a main AdminStudio UI that had the basically kind of getting started area. It had a gallery of all the different tools that you could use within AdminStudio, and it also had the Enterprise Server tab, so you could access the AdminStudio Enterprise Server from the same view. So if that's the reference of it, I think we're still, right, Bob, we're still kind of tweaking the UI with AdminStudio, and we can look to see how we can make that visible inside of potentially like the application manager.
Right. Yeah, it's not completely gone even today. If you go to, I think it's the process manager, that's the interface where that functionality lives. So you can still see it there. But we really wanted to get everybody straight into the application catalog where all the value really lies. You can access any of the tools directly from that in a couple of places. So it's still easy to get to all the tools if that's where you want to jump to. And finally, we are taking a closer look at what we want to do for a new getting started. So we've got the kind of big overview graphic that Mike was walking through in terms of the application catalog and all the functionality around it. But getting started, similar to what we had before, is something we're looking to reinvent for this new interface.
Excellent. Okay. Another question here. Would the Flexera application catalog replace the SCCM Software Center for providing app self-service to customers? Or does it just replace the interface they interface with and still host the packages themselves within the existing SCCM repository?
Sure, and maybe it kind of brings up I think Microsoft's part of their System Center Configuration Manager and their self-service portal. One of the components is also called Application Catalog. It's a good name, so I can see why they use it. It's AdminStudio and the Application Catalog. It's really your staging area, right? This is your pre-deployment area to prepare and make sure all the applications, when I'm ready to deploy to Config Manager and deploy it out to your end users, to make sure that those are prepared and ready to go. So it's really a view mostly for the IT pros to utilize prior, and then right from within AdminStudio, we can publish that as a package or as an application right into Config Manager. If it's an application, all the dependencies, requirements, supersedence, install, uninstall strings, AdminStudio can help gather all that information and make sure all that gets loaded into Config Manager if that's what you're using. We do have another product from Flexera called App Portal that can help and be that end user facing request portal. It ties into IT service management solutions like ServiceNow and BMC Remedy. But that would be if you're looking for a more robust self-service portal for end users to visit, to request new applications as well as existing package applications and other IT-related items. We do have a solution for that. That would still tie back into Config Manager, still use as a deployment system, but App Portal would be managing the approval processes and the workflows and everything there. So App Portal could be utilized in lieu of the software center, but AdminStudio is really meant, and its catalog is meant for the IT pros to, again, prepare those applications for eventual deployment.
Great, thank you. Another question, does importing vendor exe determine dependencies, or do they need to be manually added?
So some dependency information we can, like the Java compatibility or the Java dependency testing, I should say, that I showed today, that's something we can just do out of the box. I think Bob mentioned we are looking to see some other kind of very common dependencies like .NET Framework, C++ runtime libraries, and we're more than open to other suggestions and ideas from our customers and our partners. So if you have other types of dependencies you want us to kind of detect. When it comes to application compatibility and conflict testing, we still offer that in AdminStudio, so we can see if two applications both write to the same place in the registry or both place files in the same common location. You know, that's probably an indicator of dependencies and then potential for conflict if we don't have the right version. So we can give you that insight into the catalog as well.
Perfect. Okay, this is kind of we've been actually answering this question along the way. Can you let me know some of the benefits of using the application catalog?
Yeah, it's the place where all these reports are going to expose themselves. So conflict management, application compatibility, virtualization suitability, vulnerability assessment, all these things come from their being added to the application catalog. We do want to make the application catalog itself more of a feature that you can get the native value out of in terms of it being the one place where you keep all your packages. There's obviously a ton of reports that come off of this. So, you know, if you just want to repackage an application or you just want to create a transform, like I said, you can still go and just jump to those tools directly. But as a process and as a management solution for your packaging environment, the application catalog is central to essentially all of the key value we've been talking about today.
Great, thank you. Are there any plans to implement a PS app deploy toolkit wrapper editing solution where one could go in and author their own or implement the existing PSA DTK script snippets?
Not today. So we're not looking to extend to any kind of scripting IDE in AdminStudio. Once again, if this is something that everybody wants us to do, we could certainly be pushed in that direction. Please take advantage of the ideas section of our community.
Having said that, though, right, Bob, if we do create the wrapper in AdminStudio, there is an option to say edit afterwards. and we'll just pop up the PowerShell integrated scripting environment. So you can certainly make changes, but to Bob's point, we don't have our dedicated editor ourselves today, but that may change in the future.
Right. And probably necessary given the tools that are out there.
Right.
Excellent. Okay. Another question here is, when do I need AdminStudio apart from a Windows migration project?
Yeah, that's a big one. I think people typically, there's a surge of activity related to AdminStudio around a Windows migration, but a week after that migration, there's new application requests coming in. There's new updates to applications that you've already deployed, and of course, security updates, the priority packages that you need to get out the door. And all of these are, should be managed in the very same way that you did when you were preparing for your migration. So I really see AdminStudio as a tool that you use on a weekly basis, maybe a lot more during a migration project, but the need for application readiness is an ongoing part of the environment's lifecycle.
Great, thank you. Another question, when do you anticipate having the next release? Not that this isn't a package with new features, but just curious.
Everybody always wants more. That's good. That's
great.
Good. We want that feedback. Like I said, ideas, please use it. We are planning on 2 more releases this year. So we are working toward a more frequent release process. With more frequency means less functionality to some degree. We won't be able to do as much in a shorter period of time, but we do want to get the updates that we're working on out sooner. So we're hoping for one around mid-year in a couple of months, and then one towards the end of the year.
Excellent. Another question, can we convert APPX to MSI virtual package?
Yeah, it's not really designed to go the other way. AppX, PWP, whatever you want to call it, there's some unique features and capabilities that it needs in order to run on a machine. It's in essence a version of AppV in the sense that it's isolated and it has limited ability to, like a Win32 app can pretty much make any call at once, right, unless Windows actively blocks it. AppX application is put in a special sandbox. So to take that out of it, it's not really a way you can convert one way from the other. We do support the desktop bridge for those that want to go, especially, say, an organization has internally developed applications and they want to take advantage of a lot of the AppX features and the capabilities on Windows 10. You can go from Win32 app, starting with an MSI to AppX, but it's not really a reverse process.
Okay, great. And in regards to a application readiness scan, does the source have to be in MSI format, or does it scan .exe, or do you need to convert to MSI first?
Yep, we touched on it before, but in essence, EXEs are okay. We can take EXEs. Depends on the format. It's hard to say every EXE we can immediately export because there's so many different EXE scripting technologies behind the scenes, and some vendors, for whatever reason, decide to build their own installation technology from scratch and use some proprietary systems. So a lot of the most common installation vendors, of course ourselves from InstallShield, as well as some of the other ones out there, we worked hard to support the ability to export those. So I would say probably 4 out of 5 times we can take EXEs and export the right information in order to give you the insight that I showed you today. And then for those other ones, the EXE gets imported. We tell you, well, there wasn't ability to automatically extract it. I can launch a virtual machine right from the catalog, tell it to repackage it, get it into an MSI, and then I can do a lot more with it too.
Yeah, and we've got something called the automated package converter as well. that if you're looking to move applications to virtual format, an MSI can be just converted, but an executable can't. And this tool is smart enough to know the difference and spin up a virtual machine, do the repackaging operation, and then take the results of that as the basis for the new virtual version of that application. So there's a lot of setup file awareness and handling taking place in AdminStudio.
Yep, excellent. Next question is, can we upgrade from 2016 professional to 2018, and what effort is involved?
As long as you're on active maintenance, you just need to come get it. So there's nothing special that you have to do.
Perfect.
Yeah, and from a setup perspective, I was going to say, if you already have an existing catalog, AdminStudio 2018 will detect that and perform an upgrade, and then you can use it moving forward.
Yep.
Got it. Okay, I think we have time for one more question. And again, all unanswered questions will be answered via email, so you will get a response. Let's see. Is there PowerShell support available for other areas, and perhaps automation?
Yeah. There's so much has gone into that too, and I feel like that's an area where we need to improve in terms of making everybody aware of what we built there. A lot of effort's gone into supporting the automation of AdminStudio across the board. There are actual PowerShell commandlets that have been written to help you to automate pretty much every aspect of AdminStudio. There's even REST APIs. Each of the individual tools has a lot of command line support. There's a lot of ways to automate things. But aside from the PowerShell toolkit capability that we provided, the automation is pretty robust when it comes to PowerShell. We'll be posting some samples of what you can do and what specific tasks you can automate. And I think those examples will go a long way to helping people unlock the value there.
Excellent. Okay, we are at the top of the hour. I'd like to thank Bob and Mike for participating in today's What's New with AdminStudio 2018 webinar. I'd also like to thank everyone for joining us today. If you have any questions, you can contact us, and we're certainly here to help out. Thanks everyone again, and have yourselves a great day.